G'day everybody, my name is Elliot Waters and you're listening to the Dysregulated Podcast. As always, thank you for tuning in. Righto, today's episode, I haven't done one of these for a while. I've just got home from the psychologist. I just had therapy. I've just run in the door and I'm sitting down now talking to you. So I'm going to tell you all about how my therapy session went today. So the important thing to note is that, yes, this is the first one I've had in a while. So if you've been wondering where the Therapy Reflections episodes have gone, don't worry, they're coming back. I just need to get into therapy a little bit more and actually get to see my psychologist. The reason why that hasn't happened lately is because of two main reasons. One, my psychologist was away. How dare she? I think she went on holidays. I don't know. We don't really talk about her much. We usually talk about me. And the other reason is that I have not had much cash, again, as you would know, because I talk about money all the time on here, but it's true, you know. Psychology appointments here are not cheap, even if you do have a mental health care plan. So in Australia, you can get a mental health care plan that gets you 10 sessions, for those listening outside the country, can get you 10 sessions subsidised with a psychologist, and you get that through your GP, through your doctor. Now, the important thing to note is that it's subsidised. It doesn't pay for your psych session. It just makes it a bit cheaper. And it does make it quite a bit cheaper. But at the same time, it's not free. And you've got to have the money, the full cost up front. Then you get the rebate later. And if you're like me that has to go to therapy a lot, you know, you burn through those 10 sessions pretty quick. So, yeah. But anyway, so I went today, which was good. Not a great deal, admittedly, was achieved, and it never was really going to be because there was a lot to sort of fill in her about what's been going on with me more recently, especially around medications. So the types of therapies that I do at the moment in therapy, so internal family systems therapy and EMDR are the two main ones. They're not really the type of therapies where you just go in and talk about how you feel. You know, there's a bit more to it than that. That's more the CBT sort of side of things. But it was important in this therapy session today to cover the basics of what's been going on. So although I wouldn't say much was achieved, this still had to happen either way. So, yeah, so now I've got her up to speed with what's been going on, which is, of course, that I'm on more meds now than before. So my last appointment with her was before I started going to James Fletcher to see the psychiatrist there from the Newcastle Community Mental Health Team in the public system. So the last thing she knew was that she'd written a letter or a referral to the James Fletcher guys and said, you know, I think for what it's worth, me as a psychologist, I think Elliot needs to get off his meds and reassess. I've had referrals from my GP that have said the same thing. I've been saying the same thing. And yet here we are, I'm on an extra medication, the mirtazapine. She was quite shocked, to say the least, that that's what's been happening lately. She was expecting to come back and that I'd either be, you know, started tapering off meds already, or I would have been admitted to a psychiatric facility to do that, to facilitate that. And none of those things have happened. I'm not back at Ishmael. I'm not at an extended stay ward somewhere, and I'm not tapering off meds. I'm on an extra one instead. So that's 8 now, 7 or 8. So she was a bit confused about that. And I said to her that I was a bit confused about it as well because, you know, like I said, I've been advocating to get, you guys know because you listen, I'll tell you guys, I've been advocating to get myself off meds and to go back to some sort of baseline for quite a while now. And I've been pretty consistent with that. And for some reason, the people that need to be listening aren't listening, I guess. And I said this in an episode previously that maybe, you know, I haven't been able to advocate as well for myself as I would like. But then, you know, who does advocate well for themselves when they're depressed and anxious and everything else that goes with it? Like, you know, and I think I have advocated well enough that I would have got the point across that I want to try and see what life is like without these meds, knowing full well I'll probably have to go back on 1 or 2, but let's keep it to 1 or 2 instead of now on 8, where I can't tell if they're working or not. I don't think things have improved. I don't think since introducing mirtazapine things have improved. I wouldn't say they're getting worse, but at the same time, you know, I'd like to think there's a lot more room for improvement than there is for things to get worse. And there's been no improvement. So it's like, okay, what's going on there? So, 8 medications, I would expect that I would be feeling better than I do. And introducing mirtazapine, it's been a few weeks now, it's been 6 or 7 weeks. If this medication was going to do something and move the needle, I also would have thought that a little bit of that needle movement would have occurred by now, but it hasn't gone up or down. I've just stayed in the same spot. So, mirtazapine doesn't appear to be the missing ingredient in my regimen, my cocktail of medications. But I explained this all to her, and as I said, there wasn't a heap of therapy done today. It was more me filling her in, but, that needed to be done. It was all right to get off my chest, I suppose, but, it just sort of got me angry, really. Like, don't get me wrong, I wasn't getting, real angry in the session, but deep down I was feeling it, I was like, yeah, this is rubbish. What's going on, What happened to this idea of self-autonomy, being the boss of yourself? I said to her, and I think this sums it up really nicely, or at least this sums up how the relationship with your doctor or your psychiatrist or any of these mental health professionals should be, which is, so in the case of the psychiatrist, he's the expert, right? He's the expert, but I'm the boss because it's my life. So I should be the boss of things. He's the expert and can provide, expert opinion and make suggestions and come up with a plan and everything. But at the end of the day, the person who should be signing off on that plan is me because it's my life, I'm the one that has to put up with it, not the doctor. And, I guess I've been signing off a bit too easily on the whole more meds. But, I don't know. What do you would hope that these psychiatrists who are experts in the field, theoretically, would know what they're doing. And so I put a lot of trust in these psychiatrists, although often it appears I seem to know more about these medications than they do. But, again, I'm not a doctor, so I need to dial it down a bit. And as I said, they're the expert, and that's how I've sort of looked at these situations. But the experts are leading me down a path that I don't know how to get back from, Like, I've got so many meds floating around now that it's like there's no chance of knowing which medication's pulling what lever and what's doing what. And that's why I wanted a bit of a reset, so we could figure out what's going on, what the meds are contributing to or what they're improving or what they're not touching, and then what, psychology is going to take over and do the rest. So that's essentially what I was talking about in today's session. Like I said, there was no real therapy going on. It was more filling her in on what's been happening. And really, there's not much been happening. It's been more of the same. And the introduction of another medication hasn't really changed my trajectory at all, I don't think. Like I said, I don't think it's made things worse, although I seem to be putting on weight all of a sudden quite quickly, which mirtazapine is known to do. But besides that, I wouldn't say things have gotten any worse, but I certainly wouldn't say they've gotten any better. So very frustrating. She was frustrated too. She was frustrated as well, and she validated me in saying that I deserve to feel frustrated because she knows how clear I've been on this sort of topic and how clear I've been on it for a while, and she understands that for some reason doctors don't seem to be listening to me. So she validated my feelings on that, which is good. That's always good. But I really wish she didn't have to. But unfortunately, this is the situation I find myself in, which is on 8 medications and no real improvement. And I'm even further away from my goal of getting off the meds so I could see what baseline was like and maybe go back into the transport industry because I still feel as though I've got unfinished business with transport. But, it's looking less and less likely now that that will be a viable option because it's looking less and less likely that I'm getting off these meds. That's the thing. I'm at the point now where I'm just like, whatever, I'll just stay on them. But a lot of these medications on their own don't have great long-term sort of, outlooks, as far as things like, not all of them, but like, antipsychotic long-term use, for example, is shown to shrink grey matter. And there's issues around potential early onset dementia and stuff like that, and it'd be silly to think that these weren't real concerns or risks facing me, especially with the amount of meds that I'm on, and they're all pretty heavy duty gear, like no one knows for sure what the long-term implications of this many medications on my brain will be, but I guess one day we'll find out. But yeah, so today's session was mostly just filling her in, doing a bit of venting, quite a bit of venting, and she validated that, which was good because, yeah, it's always good. Not that I really needed her validation so much because I'm very confident in the fact that, that I haven't got my message across, or at least it hasn't been listened to. So I know that that's true, but it was still good to hear someone in a position or from a position of authority say, yeah, Elliot, you're thinking the right things. It's making sense. As frustrating as it is, it's making sense, Because I said to her, I was like, I'm just double checking. Like, this is logical, isn't it? That I want to get off the meds, and then it's also logical that I'd be frustrated that this hasn't happened. And on both accounts, she said, yes, it's very logical. And she herself is a bit confused by it all. She even suggested going and seeing a member of parliament about it. So if that's not an indicator of where things are at, I don't know what is. But anyway, the plan is that we come up, both of us agreed that the plan is I've got another appointment with the psychiatrist in November, although it's a bit away. We'll just keep treading water for now, as difficult as it is. And I'll go in with a bit of I've had a clear plan each time, but again, a clear plan, if this mirtazapine hasn't moved the needle, to get that point across and then be like, listen, doc, like we've thrown every medication at this thing and it hasn't improved. Let's start trying to peel them off. How about that? And try and argue for that again. But surely I'd be forgiven if I didn't have much faith that that is how it was going to turn out for me. But anyway, we'll see. But like I said, it was good to get that validation. When there was 10 minutes to go, I thought it was almost done, and I looked at my phone. I said, well, for the last 10 minutes, let's sort of plan for the next session. So that's what we did. And again, I focused on the fact that there's two main branches that I want to look at, one being career, the other being relationships. And prior to this, career has been the focus, get me feeling confident enough in my own abilities that I can go for a new job, get more money, and the good things will happen from there. And being work that maybe is a bit more in keeping with my meaning and purpose, like use that psychology degree and get into mental health and do some community work and, the stuff I should be doing if I was confident enough to follow my dreams. And then the other branch is relationships. And that's similar in getting confidence and having the confidence that I can be in a long-term relationship again that's fulfilling, and that there's someone out there who might want to put up with this, that whole sort of way of thinking. But we agreed that so I would say there's a bi-directional relationship, between these two variables. And there's an interaction effect. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. Either way, what I mean is, if I improve one, the other is improved as a result. I think the way to do it, I think if I improve the career branch, I think that'll improve my chances with relationships a lot more than if I get in a relationship and then that helping to improve the career side of things. I think the big thing for me is this new job idea and having the confidence to do that and do it well. If I can do that, then that is a lot of good positive emotion that I would then be able to transfer across, I think, to the whole relationship world. But I don't think getting in a relationship will have the same effect back on the career, but the other way. You know what I mean? So out of the two, I think to maximise the benefits, I think career and new job and work is still the one that needs the most attention. So we agreed on that, and that's what we're going to look at in more detail, pretty much pick up where we left off, essentially before I saw her last, and we're going to look at the career and the job stuff and really focus on that. And, I'm halfway there. On good days, I do genuinely believe that I have the ability to do good things and that I'm able to get new new work and get paid as I would hope for this, whatever this new work is, and the good things that come from that. It's just those flat off days that I still get really worried about it, and it feels like all the thinking, the positive thinking I've done around it, all of a sudden disappears overnight, and I need to get that out of my game. I need even the flatter days to maybe feel flat, because that's just the way it is. That's every human has flat days, but not every person has a flat day and then throws all their hopes and dreams in the bin because they don't feel as though they're good enough to chase for them and earn them. And that's what I need to try and fix, or a position I want to get into, which is even on my off days, this confidence around me and my work and what I'm able to do and achieve doesn't shift. It's solid, it's concrete. That's the goal. But again, before seeing my current psychologist, we've done a lot of work on this, and as I said, we're about halfway there. But before this, I didn't feel confident in this in any way. So there's been solid improvements, and I'm getting closer. I'm just not quite there yet. So I said, well, look, I don't want to. Part of me, there's a big part of me that really longs for a relationship and all that sort of stuff and that life. But I said to her that no, I think we need to, instead of chopping and change, is what I used to do in therapy previously with other psychologists. We would chop and change all the time because I would be chopping and changing on what I wanted to work on. And something I've really done and really focused on this time around with my current psychologist is trying to be pretty stable as far as what we're working on. And I think that's why I've seen some good improvements, whereas maybe previously I hadn't seen the improvements I was looking for. So the plan moving forward, next session, we're going back into the work stuff, imposter syndrome, the inner critic that says I can't do it, all that sort of stuff, going back to that and picking up where we left off, basically. Knowing that, the relationship thing is certainly a priority, just maybe not for right now. Because like I said, I think the best way to improve both, is to improve the career job stuff first. I think that'll get me the most bang for me buck. So that's the plan. But yeah, most of today was just a catch-up session, which, it's very expensive catch-up session, but look, it is what it is. And I just wish I had some better news to report to her on the medication front, because, like I said, she was pretty surprised that although I've had letters from my GP, I've had letters from her, I've had letters from the Mater Hospital, the acute care team, all this information, all these letters, and yet I don't appear to be any closer to starting to taper off these meds. She couldn't quite understand. And I said to her, look, I don't really understand either. But hey, it is what it is, so let's make the best of it. So the plan is, when I see her in a fortnight, we're going back to the career and job stuff. And we're also going to plan out, just briefly, we're not going to spend too much time on it, which I don't want to, because I go into these things reasonably clear, but we're going to spend a little bit of time again on how to approach the subject with the psychiatrist if it does appear the mirtazapine hasn't really done much, how to then reintroduce this idea of potential tapering from medications. I'm sure you're sick of hearing me bang on about it, but I'm sick of talking about it too. Like, after this long, I could have been off half of them by now, but, it is what it is. It is what it is. Very frustrating, that's for sure. Anyway, all right. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening. That's the latest. So expect another of these Therapy Reflections episodes to come out in a fortnight. And if something happens, I'll tell you, of course, on here. I'll let you know how it goes. But that's the plan moving forward. We're going back to the career stuff and the job hunt and getting in a position where I'm comfortable, but more importantly, confident in my own abilities and the fact that I can do meaningful work and I can be paid an amount that makes my life a hell of a lot better than it is at the moment, because I am broke. Anyway, that's enough for me. Thank you for listening, everybody. I appreciate it as always. If you've been enjoying the show, feel free to like, subscribe, give us show a great rating and share it around with your mates. You can follow me on Instagram at elliot.t.waters, and you can follow the show on Facebook by searching for the Dysregulator Podcast. All right, that's it from me. See you later.